What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens episode review. Today, guys, we are going to be going over episode 61 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. I'm excited, as always, to be discussing these episodes with you guys, so, without further ado, let's not waste any more time, and let's get right into it. So, generally speaking, what were my thoughts on episode 61 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens? Well, I thought the episode was good. I thought this was another good episode. I think these last couple of episodes have been really good for Sevens. I really have enjoyed the last couple of episodes. Episode 58, 60, and 61 have been good episodes. 59 I don't really count since it was a recap, but the other three episodes I thought were pretty good. This one I wouldn't say was on the levels as 60 and 58 in my opinion, but in its own right, I still thought it was a good episode. So let's jump right into it. So the start of this episode starts off with a conversation between Yugioh and Yuka, and essentially what this conversation was about is basically Yugioh confronting Yuka and basically telling her right in front of her face that I do not care what happens to you anymore. The thing I have come to a conclusion, what I've realized is that why do we need 6 presidents at Goha Corporation? And that was what made me decide that maybe there should just be one Goha president remaining, and I am going to be the one to be that president, and you cannot stop me with this fusion card that I possess. You cannot beat me, and I am going to be the last remaining president, which has been a constant theme with Yugioh over the series. I mean, we've already known this. For a story perspective, it makes sense. I mean, everyone at this point already knows, or at least from the Goha siblings. I think the only one that really doesn't know much about what's going on, or at least I believe doesn't know much about what's going on, is Eugene. But the thing with Eugene is that he hasn't been in the show really at all. In fact, I believe he's with that Maguro guy, if I remember correctly, so he isn't doing anything with the siblings or in terms of what the whole stuff with Yugioh was going on. So it was about a matter of time for Yuka to actually figure out what Yugioh's plans was going to be all about. When what's interesting about it is that Yugioh at this point just does not really care. That's how confident he is right now that he will succeed because of that fusion card. And will that be the thing that makes him be the only president left standing? Who really knows? And this infuriates Yuka about the situation. And she basically tells Yugioh that I'm going to make sure that I do not lose my position as a president of Goha Corporation, so your plan does not work. And that's a very interesting concept at the beginning of this episode, because it makes the audience realize that, yeah, she kind of needs to keep her president role, because if she loses a duel, she automatically loses her spot as a president, and that just goes in line with Yugioh's plan. So when you kind of think about it, Yuka really needed to win this duel, or she loses, and then it furthers Yugioh's plan, because now she can't do anything since she's not a president anymore. So right off the bat, they put a really interesting concept with this, because now Yuka has to make sure she keeps her president role. That way, Yugioh cannot continue with his plans, which, to be fair, if his plan wasn't really working that well, he could just duel Yuka and probably would cause the same results. So I don't know, it's a little bit weird, but you know, Yuka really had something to fight for in this episode to make sure that Yugioh's plan does not work out. So that was pretty interesting to kind of start off the episode. But then we get into the stuff with Yuka and the crew. They actually are with Roa, Geta, and Yoshio, which is very cool to see Roa in the show again, and to be patched up with his band members. You know, the whole conflict that happened in the last arc, that ended up getting resolved in that duel against Roman, and it seems like all the banter between the 3 members of the band is now patched up, and now they're good buddies again, which is really good. You know, I really did like to see that, although I think it was not really done very well. I've talked about that when I did my review on it, how I wasn't really happy with the way they did that Roman duel. I do like the fact that everything is patched up now, and everyone is just back to being normal. So they basically have a conversation about fusion and all that stuff, kind of letting Roa and the band members know about the situation a little bit, and they end up deciding to go and watch the meteor shower. As the day that they were talking with each other, they knew that the meteor shower was going to be on that day, so they just go outside and they decided to go and watch the meteor shower. But what's very interesting about this whole entire scene was the stuff with Rook, because apparently when a meteor shower happens, if you make a wish, your wish will come true. And you see Rook lying on the ground, like making his wish. But the weird thing about this that he realizes that he really doesn't have anything to wish for now. And this is why I really did like this aspect of this episode, was that Rook has gotten what he wished for. His biggest wish was to be the king of duels, and he already has that now. So what's next? And what I really like about that is it's growing Rook as a character, because now that he has accomplished his goal of being the king of duels, what is next for Rook? Because obviously he can't become the king of duels anymore because he already is the king of duels. So what is next for Rook's character? That is what's really fascinating about this, and it makes me really excited to kind of see where Rook's story goes after this, now that he's the king of duels. What is next for Rook's legacy, or I guess I should say Rook's supreme legacy? Kind of giving a little bit of a shout out to the Yugioh Sevens manga right there, which, by the way, for anyone that asks, I will be doing a chapter review for chapter 4 and 5 of the Yugioh Sevens manga. I have just not gotten to doing that yet. There is just some other stuff that I want to do right now. Plus, I also have OCG structures I have to worry about as well. So I might do that one first, since there's only been one chapter from what I've seen that has come out. So I'll probably do that first, then do the Sevens manga after that. But I will confirm this right now. I will be doing a chapter 4 and a chapter 5 review for the Yugioh Sevens manga. I'm just wanting to get that out of the way just in case anyone asks, since I made that joke. Alright, let's get back into the episode. That was a little bit off topic, but that ends up happening sometimes. But as they're watching or getting ready for the meteor shower, we see the baseball field on Yuka Stadium come down out of nowhere, and Yuka is there, and she is ready to challenge her next opponent. And what's very interesting about this going into this duel as well is that the Goha Presidents are in the lead right now. It's a 3-2 score, so Yuga and his crew needs to pick up the pace. And at first, this episode seems like it's going to be a Roman Yuka rematch, but Roa decides to step up and actually participate in this duel, since Roman did lose the duel the last time she faced off against Yuka, and basically he wants to get revenge for what happened to Roman. And basically she agrees with that, and then we get into the duel between Roa and Yuka, which I need to also talk about this as well. And I don't know what to really think about this. It kind of bothers me that they still joke around with this, but I do think it is funny to some degree. Geta and Yoshio in this episode as well kind of mention that she's full right now since she's eating a lot of food, so that means that it's a low chance for her to go into her awakened state, and she kind of gets a little bit mad about this. And that's where I think the funny aspect of it is, because they think that she will not be able to win this duel without the awakened mode, I guess, but that's just because they're used to it at this point. But what I find so hilarious about that as well is that she did not use the awakened mode but beat Roa. Like, that was so hilarious to me, with them acting like, yeah, if you want to beat Yuka, you need to use the awakened mode, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, she beat Yuga, and she beat your best friend Roa, the leader of your group, so she is confident in doing that. But I'm also mad at the same time, because I don't like that whole joking aspect of that. I understand it makes a reference back to the whole awakened mode, but you guys know my thought on the whole awakened Roman state. I never liked it since its introduction, and even jokes about that and the way they did it, I'm just not really a big fan of it, because we know Roman is a capable duelist. I mean, heck, she beat Yuga and Roa without the mode. So I just feel like the fact that they're making a joke about the mode makes really no sense. And I know I keep bringing this up. Well, Actually, no. I don't think I brought it up this arc, actually, in particular. I'm thinking about back in the past, but one thing, because I thought about it when I watched episode 59, was that since they've been joking around with the Awakened Roman state, does that mean there's a chance that they're going to bring that back? Like, the whole last arc, she did not use it once. Are they implying that they might go down that route again? I mean, it's a similar situation with Gagating, and hey, we saw that in the opening, so I really don't know. Me personally, I hope they don't do that, but we'll have to wait and see. That's also another thing that I didn't really think about until not only watching episode 59, but after this little joke scene with Geta and Yoshio. But again, it could probably just be for a comedic state. But getting into the actual duel between Roa and Yuka, general thoughts on the duel. I thought the duel was good. It was a very interesting duel, and they kind of made that the case when they said it in the summary. You know, it's basically like a band versus baseball, which is pretty interesting. Music versus baseball, which is a pretty interesting topic. I think one of the biggest things that came out of this duel for me was that we not only saw the Utopia baseball-looking monster, but now we have a version of Utopic Dragon in Yuka's deck. Excuse me? Are we kidding now? Not only did you do Utopia, but now you're doing Utopic Dragon, which I think that's more of a surprise to me, because I really was on the route that the new ace monster of Yuka's, if she was going to use a new ace monster, was going to be more of a Utopia Ray monster, but no, it's Utopic Dragon, which, if you guys are big fans of Zexal, you remember that that was the ace monster of Astral's deck in that duel against Yuma, as that was the final Xyz monster he used during that duel against Yuma. You know, you had the toe-to-toe between number 99 Utopic Dragon, and then you had Utopic Future, or Utopia Future, depending on which version that you watch. So that was pretty interesting that that was the new ace monster that she had in this deck. Am I mad that it's not a Utopia Ray version? No, not at all. I think it's really cool that they decided to dive into something else, and it's this big dragon that's basically a baseball stadium Utopic Dragon, which interesting, not expecting it. I really did believe it was going to be kind of like a Utopia Ray monster as her new ace, but I'm not mad about it being Utopic Dragon. I think that was a really cool reference to that monster. But another thing to mention with Yuka as well for this duel was that during the duel, I think it was during the third turn of the duel, she actually injures her arm when she's drawing cards, which is very interesting because Proprietress makes a statement that she's not used to pitching balls in the Earth's gravity, so that caused her shoulder to basically, in a sense, be damaged. And that was very interesting to kind of learn about that as well, is that because she couldn't adapt to the gravity of Earth in pitching balls, it actually injured herself when she drew those cards. So that was pretty interesting when you really looked about that as well. And also, to mention this as well, I did like the fact that you also have like the stadium and all that stuff. Then you have like the live arena from Roa's Fiospell, and just in the crowd, you know, you see all the people that are part of Yuka's Fiospell, you know, the people that are cheering her on for like baseball and stuff like that. And then you just have Mimi out of nowhere just sitting in the crowd as well, just cheering for Roa, which really was the only purpose for her in this duel, which honestly, I forgot she was in the episode until, like, you know, you hear her calling out during Roa's final turn of this duel. So that was pretty interesting that she was just there for no reason. I just found that pretty hilarious. But another thing that's interesting about this, going back into the whole thing about her hurting herself, she basically yells at Yugioh and tells Yugioh that we are siblings. We should stick together. We shouldn't be separating ourselves. We should be together. And this just shows how much of an SOB and a cold-hearted person that Yugioh is, as he just sits there while watching his sibling injured, and he's just sitting there just like, basically just smirking off like he doesn't care. And I will say this makes me hate Yugioh, but in a good way, because he just does not care for anyone. He just cares about himself and just being the only president remaining. He does not care if his sibling gets injured or something like that. He doesn't care what happens to his siblings. As long as he's the last remaining president, that's what all that matters to him. And that is what I love about Yugioh. But the one thing I will say about this, and that I'm really worried about because it's sevens and I feel like it's a very good chance of happening, I really do believe that at the end of this arc, Yugioh is going to be redeemed, and he's basically going to be a more of a nice person. Maybe still have a sadistic side to him to some point, kind of like a similar to a 4 kind of character, or Quattro and the Dove, whatever way you want to call him. So if they kept that concept to be interesting, I wouldn't like the redeeming aspect of it, but it's sevens. It's more than likely going to be a redemption. So we'll just have to wait and see in regards to that. But I will say this, Yugioh feels like the first villain of Yugioh Sevens. I really do believe that. All the other stuff like Nail and Asana being villains, I didn't really see them being villains. They just didn't fit that role of a villain very well to me. So I'm really glad that we have a character like Yugioh, and I do hope going forward that we have another character like Yugioh going further down the show. I really do like Yugioh as a villain, but I think the final thing to mention about this duel as well was the monsters that Roa uses to defeat Yuka, as each of the monsters he used during this duel were just very weak attack point normal monsters. But what's so interesting about them is that they all represented their band members. There was a guitar that represented Roman. I think there was a bass that represented Amaya Yoshiro, and then you had the drum set that was a representation of Geta. And what I liked about this, well, there was 2 things I liked about it. One, it gave a little bit of backstory for Roa and Roman, and I really did like the backstory. I'm really glad that we got a little bit more backstory about Roa and Roman, and just the whole group in general, and how the band ended up starting up in the first place. I really did like that a lot. But another thing that this did was that it kind of redeemed itself from the last duel. I did not like the way they did that last duel because, you know, the whole thing that caused the debate in the last arc was that, you know, you had Roa sacrificing 2 monsters that he said represented Geta and Yoshio to summon his big new ace monster, and ended up winning that duel. And then the next time he duels is against Roman, and he realizes that he was wrong in what he did, and he actually uses the 2 ace monsters that he represented as Geta and Yoshio to duel against Roman. Did not sacrifice them at all. He actually had the monsters on the field. But what has bothered me about that duel so much is that he still lost from that. You know, what was very weird about it is that the message just didn't get out there, because the time he sacrificed his monsters, and basically, in a sense, sacrificing Geta and Yoshio for the context of that arc, he won his duels. He was actually being successful, but the time that he actually doesn't do that, he loses the duel. So honestly, that, in my opinion, and that's something that has just infuriated me with that duel. And don't get me wrong, the dueling action was still good, but that was just that one moment that kind of bothered me, was because the point you were trying to make just didn't fit with that. Because again, the way you were trying to represent it was not done well at all. It made it seem like if you want to, the way of sacrificing the monsters was the right way to do it, because the one time he doesn't do it, he ends up losing the duels. So the fact that they actually decided to redeem this concept with these 3 low-level normal monsters, and actually had Roa win the duel with these monsters, I really did like that. And again, I might be a little bit harsh on that duel, but it was just the way it was represented. It just didn't feel right. This feels like what should have happened in that Roa Roman duel, where he should have used the 2 monsters that represented Geta and Yoshio to be able to get over Roman and make him realize that he was wrong. That's one of my biggest arguments with that duel, was that whole thing that they ended up doing during that Roa turn. But they did make it up with this duel, and I really did appreciate that. And at first Yuka was surprised by this because you have these weak normal monsters, and at the time she had her uniform number 99 monster, her uniform number 39 monster, and I think it was a that Gaga monster, I believe it was. I could be wrong. I can't really remember what the other monster was. And she had a pretty big board on her field at that point in the duel, and she was surprised by this, but Roa activated like one or two spells, and that was able to get the monster's attack points over the monster's attack points of her ace monsters and the other monster, and was able to defeat Yuka using those two monsters, or those three monsters, excuse me. And that's where another point of this duel that I want to talk about to kind of end the discussion with this is that Roa ended up winning this duel, which I am so happy that he won this duel. I felt like this was a duel that he 100% needed to win. I know some people were a little bit sad to see Yuka lose this duel because more than likely that means she's done dueling for the rest of this arc, but honestly, I think she did a role for dueling great. I think she was good for a dueling perspective because she actually got a win against one of the main four members of the group in the form of Roman, who beat Yuga and beat Roa. So that, honestly, she already showed herself as being a good duelist, and just because of the fact that she lost this duel and will no longer be a president does not necessarily mean that she will not be relevant in the story. I mean, the only one of the siblings that's not really that relevant is, again, Eugene, which has just been a weird character in general, but Yugioh still sticks around, and I really do believe, because of the way they've been developing Yuka during this arc, I would be very surprised if they just took Yuka out of the show for seemingly no reason. But after the duel, she kind of throws a little bit of a hissy fit about this, which I feel like some of that is because of her being a sore loser, but also because of the whole perspective of this episode, because like I mentioned earlier, she was trying to keep her role as a president so that Yugioh cannot succeed with her plans. But not only did she lose this duel, and I think also her like kind of crying about the whole situation also kind of fits with her fiery spirit and kind of has a little bit of a balance between that, because I remember when she won that duel against Roman and you just saw her so happy about that, and then you had the duel with Roa when she lost, and she's pretty upset about it. And at first, I was a little bit like weirded out about that, but I gotta remember that these are kids. Like I always was indifferent when Yuga was just on the ground just pounding like a little kid, but that is something I gotta remember when watching this show, is that these are little kids. They're like 11 years old, so I had to get used to that, and I did get used to that. So the whole thing about Yuka crying and kind of throwing a little temper tantrum, I did not mind that at all. I actually think that actually fit a lot better than the Yuga one, because it made sense with her fiery passion of like dueling and all that stuff, and her fighting spirit, or fiery spirit, I should say. That I think that's a better representation of that. And then basically being a sore loser when she loses a duel, plus it being a little bit more relevant as well because of the whole thing with Yugioh and all that stuff. So I actually did not mind that scene at all. And I guess the final thing to kind of mention in this episode as well, because after the whole thing with Yuka, they basically go back to watching the meteor shower, and then we see Luke return home, and he noticed that the Luke man, like comic book that he wrote as a kid, was missing, and he was scattering around trying to look for it. And then out of nowhere, you just hear this ominous voice calling out to Luke, and he then ends up running out of the house and ends up following this mysterious blue light into the forest. And we see Luke look over the bushes to this blue light, and he seems very surprised about something. Now, what is he surprised about? I really have no idea. That's the way they ended up ending off this episode, but this is very interesting, and I'm very curious to see what this mysterious blue light was and why was it calling for Luke. It was really, really weird, and I'm really excited to kind of learn all about that in the next episode. I'm assuming that's going to be in the next episode. So we're going to have to wait and see what that was all about. But with that being said, that is going to be it for this episode review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys' thoughts were on episode 61 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. Did you like the episode? Did you think the episode was okay? Or did you not really like the episode at all? Let me know you guys' thoughts on Roa returning in the Sevens and his duel against Yuka. Did you like the duel or not? And just Yuka in general as well, because a thing I forgot to mention in the episode as well was that she did say something about, like, implying to Yuo, is that as long as you don't find this thing, you cannot become the president, or like the final president, like the remaining president. I don't really know much to talk about. That's why I didn't really mention that in the review, because I really don't know what that was all about. So with that line in mind, do you think she is going to stay relevant, or do you think she will disappear and that's just like a throwaway line? And let me know your guys' thoughts on Luke in this episode as well, and the whole stuff that's been going on with him as well. Would love to know all your guys' thoughts on this down below. But with that being said, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.